if regional autonomy or autonomous region is good for the Moros, it should be good for all other Filipinos. Why single them out with this
Bakit sila lang?
price of autonomous region?
Because
Are the other regions not entitled to it or able to operate an autonomous region?
I suppose part of the issue that is going to come up is what powers are going to be devolved. I mean, everybody's been talking about, Imperial Manila, and all the provinces are, etc., are dependent on Imperial Manila. And so everybody's looking for a form of devolution and an ability to decide their own fate to some extent, no? So some people have talked about it as an internal self-dependence and external self-determination. And they are drawing a distinction between an internal self-determination and an external self-determination, largely in terms of the powers that are going to be devolved. There are a lot of examples of devolution in the world, no? One of them, for example, was the devolution of powers to Scotland granted by the UK.
And Wales, yeah.
Yeah, and Wales.
And Northern Ireland.
And Northern Ireland. Yet those institutions or those entities still belong to the UK.
A unitary state.
No, it's a unitary state. So the question here is, when do you breach the line and become virtually an autonomous state, not an autonomous region? What would distinguish it? And one of that is the two things in the MOA that are very troubling is the definition of the relationship between the Philippines, the GRP, and the Bangsamoro entity as being associative. And number two is the granting to the BME, rather, that will be evolved, kung matuloy ito, the idea that they can make treaties in effect with other nations. These are two fundamental characteristics of independent states. Ano tingin mo doon, Alan?
Dapat tingnan natin doon sa puntong legal na ang apat na elemento ng isang estado ay binubuo ng tao, mga people, no? Territory, and then government and sovereignty. Yung sinasabi na sub-state, pwedeng i-reconcile yan provided wala yung sovereignty for the sinasabi mo internal state. They can have people, they can have territory, they can have government, but sovereignty has to remain with the principal state. Okay. And in fact, it would not be correct to say that there are two states. That is why I feel uncomfortable with the associative theory hypothesized, because this theory involves two states, and states have all the same common elements. But in this particular case, the smaller entity,
or the less powerful entity,
yes, has no sovereignty, because if you put in sovereignty there, then the problem will arise.
They become independent states.
Yes, that is.
Well, I think in international law that's already recognized that when you use the term associative, it is between two states of unequal power. That's why the association is being sought, for reasons that are advantageous to the less powerful state. Pero underlying it is the fact that it is a state, or as it is partly recognized now in international law, it is a transitional position for the weaker state on the way to independence.
Well, let's talk about something concrete, which they have agreed. The Republic of the Philippines and the autonomous region of Muslim Mindanao. The Muslims are not talking about secession. Both are agreed that powers like foreign affairs, national defense, postal service, coinage and monetary policies, citizenship and naturalization, global trade and national taxation shall remain with the national government. Okay. Belongs to the national government.
Yet it says there foreign affairs, but how do you define the ability to have treaties with other nations?
Well, they're not having any treaties with other nations.
No, as a state, they are able to create economic treaties.
No,
so long as there is a provision of aggression towards the Philippines.
No. As I said, let's be factual, because this comes from Miriam Coronel, who is there, and Marvick Leonin. What the our ARM, our MNLF is asking, which is beyond what can be granted, is they're asking for administration of justice, quarantine, customs and tariff, general auditing, national elections, maritime, land and air transportation and communications, and patents and copyrights. So no way. Those are powers and authority belonging to the national government. So they have asked for this, but there is no
But there is
agreement.
nothing there which says that they are confined to that if she should ask for something else at a later stage.
Oh, no.
Di ba?
No, these are already excluded. There are commonalities and there are differences. So let's be very clear that there is no secession being asserted now. And there is acceptance of the powers and authority of the national government on these areas that I have mentioned. And then when the MIF asked for these extra powers, our government said no, no way.
What extra powers were they asking?
I just mentioned them.
Quarantine.
Administration of justice, quarantine, customs and tariff, general auditing, national elections,
We said no to
maritime,
them?
land and air transportation and communications, patents and copyrights.
We said no to that.
Yes, the government has said no.
So the government confined itself to granting them what authorities as a sub-state?
Well, under the concept of regional autonomy, without becoming a federal state, maintaining a devolved unitary state, those are areas for discussion and possible compromise. But the prohibited areas are very clear. And but if the MILF insists on what they call a sub-state, which is extended autonomous regional autonomy and so on, it may not be possible without amending the Constitution.
In other words, it cannot be agreed to by the GRP at this time because the GRP cannot guarantee the approval or that the people will ratify that change in the Constitution if whatever provision in that...
No, it's more than that. Now, first of all, the President seems averse to constitutional change. Now, he uses the euphemistic language. It is not a priority at this time.
All right.
So that's why it's very difficult to determine how much further regional autonomy and local autonomy may be granted.
Some people have been saying...
Beyond which an amendment of the Constitution would be required.
Some people are saying that what is in the Memorandum of Agreement, by whatever name you call it, is a much more powerful entity than the autonomous region recognized in the Constitution. Okay. Now, if that is true, and that seems to be the opinion of the Supreme Court as well, if that is true, what kind of memorandum of agreement can we arrive at when so many of the fundamental demands of the MILF in the memorandum of agreement seem to conflict with quite a number of provisions of the Constitution and our laws? So, where will the GRP put itself? Sa tingin mo, how can you, if you were in the GRP panel, how can you then negotiate on some of these issues where now you are in the face of an existing decision of the Supreme Court that cites quite a few items as being violative of the law and the Constitution?
The memorandum of agreement should only be very simple. It doesn't have to go into such details. If I were in the panel, why? Because my interest would simply focus on the use of the terms sub-state, hindi pwede yan. Why? Because of the element of sovereignty that is necessarily implied in the use of the name state. This is a well-established principle in law that every state has 4 elements and it includes sovereignty. Now, if there is an agreement for the sake of peace that there will be a regional, an autonomous region which will have its own people, which will have its own territory and its own government,